This ugly fight broke out in a Noida restaurant between the staffers and customers over a 10% service charge levied on the bill. But this incident made me question, can a restaurant levy a service charge? And is it mandatory for you to pay it? Before we solve this mystery for you, do like, share and subscribe to Moneycontrol. First, let me quickly tell you what had happened at the restaurant. A customer from a group of about a dozen people at Float by Duty Free restaurant in Noida's Spectrum Mall had raised her concern with the waiter regarding the removal of the 10% service charge, which was Rs 970. The concern was then escalated to the manager, and an argument broke out between them, which led to the men from both sides engaging in fisticuffs. After the video went viral, 5 people, including 3 restaurant workers and 2 from the customers group, were arrested. Now let's understand, what is a service charge levied by restaurants? A service charge is a kind of fee that is collected from the consumers to cover the cost of services related to the purchase of a product or any service. The fee is typically applied at the time of the transaction. And remember, it is neither a tip nor a tax. Restaurants, banks and tourism industry are a few industries that collect service charges. It is primarily collected for additional perks or expenses of the staff involved in the service. Now, a restaurant bill in India comprises a basic food charge from the menu, an addition of a service charge of anywhere between 5 to 15% and a 5% GST on this amount. Most restaurants decide the service charge on their own and print it at the bottom of the menu with an asterisk. It is this component that has come under dispute from time to time, with consumers arguing that they are not bound to pay it.
It all started from the word tip. Now, tip, gratuity, service charge are all words of the same meaning, and it's basically a charge which is charged by a restaurant space or a food and beverage space over and above the food bill for the betterment or basically a service for the services which are rendered to the customer. You know, there are restaurants which are a little upmarket or high-end restaurants where the bill is quite high. So if let's say today the association says that it is a 10% charge which should be a flat throughout the country. Now the point is, people are not understanding the charge is actually a percentage which is actually shared to the staff. Let's say if my bill at a high-end restaurant is, let's say, around 5,000 rupees, and if I have to pay 10% of that particular amount, is 500 rupees, which will always be a question mark in my mind, should I be actually paying 500 or not? At the same time, so these high-end restaurants decided that, it is at the restaurant's will, whether should I be charging 10%, 8%, 7% or 5%. So the smaller restaurant, medium segment restaurants started charging 10, the high-end restaurants started charging 5, 7, 8, but it totally depends on the kind of service levels or the kind of the amount which the restaurant owner would like to, or the company would like to hand it over to the service staff. For a better clarity, if there is a recommendation that we should actually be having a set rate of service charge, then definitely we can think about it. No charge should be there on the takeaway. Even the Honorable Court has also mentioned this in the previous judgment, that there should be no service charge on the takeaway.
Well, many of us are confused about whether to pay or not to pay the service charge, as last year every one of us heard about service charge being illegal and cannot be levied by default in the food bills. That's because in July 2022, the Central Consumer Protection Authority had issued some guidelines to prevent the violation of consumer rights in hotels and restaurants. The CCPA's rationale for this was that the service cost, like other costs, should be inherent in the price of the food or beverage. Thus, the price should include both the goods and service component, and charging anything more would be deemed an unfair trade practice under the Consumer Protection Act 2019. But the National Restaurant Association of India in 2022 had filed a petition challenging these guidelines. In an order dated 20th July 2022, the Delhi High Court stayed the service charge guidelines. The stay, though, was given on a conditional basis, and the court held that restaurants shall not levy a service charge on any takeaway items and shall also ensure that the service charges that they propose to be levied in addition to the prices and taxes payable are prominently displayed. Well, the centre also appealed against the court order.
Yes, a restaurant, in view of the High Court's order, can levy service charge. The only condition that has been imposed by the High Court is that on deliveries and takeaways, there will be no service charge. And secondly, a restaurant has to prominently display whether they'll be levying service charge or not. Then it's up to the customer whether they want to step into the restaurant and avail it or not. But if it is prominently displayed and the customer chooses to enter into the restaurant knowing fully well that they will be charging service charge, then yes, that charge has to be paid. During the meantime, what was happening was restaurants were quoting the High Court and trying to justify the levy of service charge as if High Court has already passed a final order. To which the High Court has said that pending the adjudication, it should be clarified that High Court has not justified, it has merely stayed the CCPA guidelines with respect to service charge in the meantime. And it is still discretionary on every restaurant eating place to whether charge or not to charge.
Taking note of this Noida brawl over service charge, the Department of Consumer Affairs has written to NRAI that service charges are optional and shouldn't be imposed forcefully on consumers, especially when consumers are dissatisfied with the service provided to them by the restaurant. After hearing this case in April 2023, Justice Pratibha Singh of Delhi High Court told the NRAI to file affidavit that indicate the percentage of their members who impose the service charge as a mandatory condition on food bills and members who support its petitions. The court also said, while listing the matter for hearing on July 24, 2023, that the affidavit shall indicate whether the members would have an objection in case the term service charge is changed to some alternative terminology like staff welfare fund, staff welfare contribution, or staff charges, to avoid confusion in the minds of consumers that the charge is being levied by the government in a form of tax. So, what are the guidelines for it?
Service charge limit is total 10% of the food bill value. So if assuming your food the food that you ordered is 100 rupees, service charge will not exceed 10% of that value. So it cannot be more than 10 rupees. GST has to be charged on the service charge once it's payable. So assuming how it's calculated is the food bill plus 10% of the service charge will be added to the food bill, and then GST will be applicable on the entire cost, including the service charge. Because it is a rendition of service and the GST Council has provided for this situation, therefore, yes, GST is applicable on service charge.
Well, we hope you found this video informative, and for more such videos, keep watching Money Control.